Let's try this again in problem 5. This one's going to be a little more complicated, I think. Step 1, move the constant to the other side and the x's to the left. So we're going to do minus 6 and minus 6. So we end up getting 3x squared. I'm going to try to stay out of your way with my left hand. Minus 12x equals negative 6. Step 2, and this time we actually have a number. We have to divide, in our case, by 3 because that's the number in front of x. So that's going to be x squared minus 4x equals negative 2. So I had to divide by 3 because there was a number in front of x squared. Step 3, take half of the b value and square it. So there's my b value of negative 4. So I'm going to do 1/2 of negative 4, and I'm going to square it. That gives me negative 2 squared, which is a positive 4. This number is very important. And just so happens that it's the same as the last problem, so I'm sorry that did happen, but oh well. Okay, add that new value to both sides. So on this side I'm going to have x squared minus 4x, and I'm going to add this new value to both sides, equals negative 2, add that new value to both sides. Hopefully you realize that this is going to equal on this side, negative, it's going to equal 2. Okay? Hopefully you'll understand that when we get to the next step. Step 5, factor the left side to a perfect square. So this trinomial turns into a perfect square binomial. The square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 4 is 2. This sign drops down. Now if you struggle finding this number right here, it's the same as what was in parentheses up there. If I want to color code it, I would do it like this. This green negative 2 matches this green negative 2. And on this side, negative 2 plus 4 made a positive 2. Now you're almost home free. Step 6, take the square root of both sides. So that's going to be the square root of this and the square root of this. And also a big reminder to use plus and minus on the right. So the square root of this binomial just cancels the square. So you get x minus 2. There is no square root of 2, and 2 is such a small number, none of these are going to fit inside of 2. Like you can't do 4 does not go into 2, 9 does not go into 2. So that is actually reduced. I have a feeling we might struggle with this portion of it, but we can talk a lot more about it in chapter 4. You'll get sick of it by the end. You might be sick of it now. Add or subtract the value from the left. So we need to, in order to solve for x, we need to add this 2 to both sides. And I promise you're done now. Bring down your x, those cancel. Here's your positive 2, a plus, and a minus square root of 2. So there are 2 answers here. 2 plus square root of 2 and 2 minus square root of 2. Okay, last page. One more time. Hopefully you haven't, well, one more time for completing the square, then I'm going to show you how to write something in Vertex form. Let's try the steps one more time. So we're going to move the constants to the right, the x's to the left. So I see this 3 has to become a minus 3 because it's on the wrong side. And this x is on the wrong side. We have to minus it to the other side or subtract it to the other side. Let's write what we're going to have after we move stuff to the appropriate sides. The 2x squared is still 2x squared. Those become minus 2x. Those cancel, equals 6. Step 2, divide by what's in front of x squared. In this problem, that will be division by 2. X squared minus 1x equals 3. Step 3, take 1/2 of the b value, which is negative 1, and square it. That gives us, okay, that actually is going to give us negative 1/2 when we multiply, and we're going to have to square that, and that is going to give us a positive 1/4. If you have to use decimals here, I guess you could, but working with fractions is a lot better. Step 4. All right, so we have fractions. This one's definitely a little more intense. Remember, this 1/4 is a super important number to remember for the next step. Add this new value to both sides. So we had x squared minus 1x. Now add the 1/4 to that side and add the 1/4 to this side. And I'll color code that for you. So here's our plus 1/4 in blue, plus 1/4 in blue from the step above. Okay, step 5, factor the left to a perfect square. So that trinomial is going to become the square root of x squared is just x. The square root of 1/4 is 1/2. This minus sign drops down. I will color code this. If you struggle finding this negative 1/2 number, it comes from this negative 1/2 up there. And that equals 3 plus 1/4. I know it's 3.25, but I really would encourage you to use a fraction like 13/4. Don't panic that we have fractions. Just stay with it. Use your calculator if you need to. Take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of this side and the square root of this side. The square root of this side just cancels that square. So we have x minus 1/2 equals a positive and a negative. Now be very careful. The square root of 13 is just the square root of 13. What's nice about this problem is that the square root of 4 is 2. So please notice the 13 stays inside the square root and the square root of 4 just becomes 2. Number 7, add the value, in our case add or subtract it depending on what it looks like, to both sides, and we're done now. We're going to cancel those, so we get x equals a positive 1/2 plus and minus the square root of 13/2. There's a very good chance that this could be the answer, or they might put, since the denominators match, you could write 1 plus or minus the square root of 13 all over 2. Both are correct answers. I will certainly accept both on your classwork, but be prepared. The quiz could have them separated, or since they had a common denominator, the numerators together with that common denominator. In problem 6, I have already taught you how to do this. You learned this in 4-2. So what I personally think is, why reinvent the wheel? If we want to write something in Vertex form, we could complete the square to do it, but quite frankly, don't you guys know how to find the vertex by now, I hope? This is in standard form. Please make sure you understand this is in standard form. So we have to find the vertex. Well, that's x equals negative b over 2a, or opposite b over 2a. So opposite 4 over 2 times 1, which is negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. This is old. You should know how to do this. Y is going to equal, plug in your negative 2. This is old news. You actually should have just done this on your quiz today. So you get y equals 4 minus 8 minus 6. It's negative 4. It's negative 10. So to put this in vertex form, you write y equals, the a value was 1, parenthesis, x minus this number, so plus 2, and then plus that number, in this case minus that 10 in the back. I would be happy to show you how to do this and complete the square. I also think it's useless to teach you something when you already know how to do something. So if you would like me to show you how to complete the square and put it in vertex form, I am more than happy to do so. This is probably the best method, okay? So So we're actually not going to use completing the square because I think that's dumb, in my opinion. So it says name the vertex. Well, that's pretty easy. -2, -10. That's the vertex. And it says name the y-intercept. Well, I'm really hoping you know the y-intercept is when x equals 0 by now. I hope. If not, can you just memorize that for me? The y-intercept is when x equals 0. So the easiest way for me, guys, is to plug 0 in at the very beginning. So if I do 0 squared plus 4 times 0 plus -6, the y-intercept is -6. Okay? So they asked us to identify the vertex and the y-intercept. They asked for the vertex form. We're all done. I hope completing the square wasn't too terrible for you. We're not going to do it a lot, but we'll see you tomorrow. We'll see how you do.